Christian McCaffrey is going to be out of the game on Sunday versus the Minnesota Vikings and could be headed to IR. So the key matchups in this game change a little bit, but I think everyone was kind of expecting McCaffrey might miss this game. Both teams very good, started 1-0. Of course, we've went over the numbers. We've started talking about this matchup, and now we're going to get into the X's and O's and the key matchups that are going to make up who wins this game and who doesn't. Can the 49ers get over the hump and win for the first time in Minnesota in 32 years? We're going to talk about all that and more in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Keysar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way. From off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Time to talk about the key matchups in the game. 49ers versus Minnesota Vikings. And it's going to be a fun one. And we know now that Christian McCaffrey is for sure not playing. In fact, we've got updates on several players. And now that the kind of the news is coming out that we're going to have players from both sides missing, now we can evaluate how each team goes about it. How does Kevin O'Connell deal with the fact that he's going to be missing Jordan Addison? How does Kyle Shanahan go about handling the fact he's going to be missing Christian McCaffrey? And of course, we've seen the 49ers do it already, but you still want to see how they're going to handle it because this is a different makeup of defense they're going against. You knew what you were getting from Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbricht's defense with the New York Jets. Very familiar to Kyle Shanahan. But now you're going against Brian Flores in that defense. And it is one of the most unpredictable defenses in the entire league. So it's going to put pressure on every one of the San Francisco 49ers offensive players to make sure they don't give easy opportunities for the Vikings. And what do I mean by that? Well, number one, don't make mistakes. Don't jump off sides. Don't give extra yards to Brian Flores to be able to use to get after you and put pressure on Brock Purdy. Don't put yourself behind the sticks. You have to make sure you're playing disciplined, deliberate football this week. It also means don't miss blocks. Know your assignments and execute your assignments. And sometimes your assignments are going to get way more complicated because it might be a look or a certain type of lineup that you don't normally see from the Vikings, and you got to be able to work through it. We're going to talk about all the matchups in this game. There's going to be a couple I'm going to save for the game preview show, but we're going to get into a lot of them in this, and it's going to be very, very fun because these two teams, it's a fun matchup, and you've got two good teams that have some familiarity due to the fact you've got Brandon Staley over with the 49ers. He used to coach with Kevin O'Connell. You got Mike Pettin with the Vikings. He used to coach with Kyle Shanahan. And then there's a lot of respect factor, and they just played last season. Sam Darnold's the quarterback of the Vikings. Familiarity there. So it's going to be a cool one. I hope you guys all will enjoy this one. It's going to be fun. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. So when trying to figure out what key matchups each team is going to look at, of course, I wanted to look at the Vikings playing the Giants last week. And of course, I went ahead and broke that one down. I broke down 49ers versus Jets. And then I went ahead and took a peek last year to week 7, 49ers in Minnesota. And there's definitely some differences between the personnel that's on both teams. Just guys who were available. You know, Jordan Addison made some big plays last year in that week 7 game. So did TJ Hawkinson. But also there was defensive players that were making an impact on the D-line, a guy like Danielle Hunter. Those guys are not going to be playing in this game. And for the 49ers, it changes vastly too. Last year, they had Christian McCaffrey in this matchup, but were missing Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel. Now you have Trent and Deebo, and you don't have McCaffrey. You also didn't have a Jordan Mason last year that could run at this level. So even though personnel changes a little bit, you still get an idea of what these teams want to do schematically. And that's one of the areas we're going to talk about. But first, let's go over the injuries, what we're looking at from both teams, and that'll kind of give us a clear picture on how these matchups are going to go about. So the 49ers, of course, are going to be without Christian McCaffrey, officially ruled out. Last week, the designation was questionable. This week, it's out, and now on the table's IR. So there's a potential Christian McCaffrey could be out to week 6, week 7. We'll see. 49ers will make that decision. Matt Mayoko said 24 hours potentially. So we might know here in the near future. Now, the good news for the 49ers, Yetur Gross-Matos is back. He suffered the MCL sprain against the Raiders in week 3 preseason. Now he comes back, and that bolsters the 49ers defensive line rotation at defensive end and also presents some unique opportunities for him to move inside on obvious pass downs and rush against the Minnesota Vikings guards. We'll bring up why that's important later, but Yetur Gross-Matos, big free agent signing for the 49ers to go behind Leonard Floyd and Bosa. 49ers just got a lot better along the defensive line at the edge position, which was a question mark last week. They held up. They had Robert Beal Jr. only played 6 snaps, the rookie from last year. So, I mean, actually second year this year, but not a lot of snaps for him. And then they had brought up Sam Okuwanu off the practice squad. So it's likely Okuwanu won't be available for this game, and they will go another position where they elevate someone off the practice squad, which could be important if they want to elevate a running back. We will see. Now, D. Winters is still listed as questionable, even though he has practiced for the last 2 days. There is a chance that D. Winters will be available in this game, and he was competing for the starting Sam linebacker spot, so he could be pivotal. Right now, I don't think he would get on into the starting lineup. I still think Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles is going to play the Sam linebacker until he potentially falters. But it would be nice for depth reasons and special teams reasons for D. Winters to be out there and playing. And then Talanoa Hufanga was listed as doubtful, so it's not likely Hufanga is going to play this week. You've got potential of him playing next week against the divisional rival Rams. That's a chance. And then even more of a chance when you're playing the Patriots in week 4. You're at home on grass, and you have Arizona the week after. Seems it could be the sweet spot. I was hoping that Talanoa Hufanga was going to play this week. I kind of even predicted he might. That is not coming to fruition. It looks like he's going to be out. So George Odom will still be starting at safety alongside Jair Brown. Now for the Minnesota Vikings, a little bit of bad news for them. I mentioned it earlier. Jordan Addison is out of this football game, and he was pivotal to the Vikings' win last year. Now, of course, he was pivotal because they didn't have Justin Jefferson. This time they do. So the 49ers still got their hands full, this time with the number 1 wide receiver in the league in Justin Jefferson. But it could have been a lot more impactful to have those two guys together. Would have gave Sam Darnold more weapons to be able to use and just kind of thin out the 49ers coverage, having to account for both of them. But he will not be playing in this game. Now, questionable is Harrison Smith, and he has missed a practice this week. That is something to monitor. We'll see what happens with Harrison Smith. I'm still leaning towards the thought that he's going to play in this football game. He's just one of those guys. He's tough, he's smart, and if he can get on the field and help his team, he's going to. But something to monitor, because that could be a little bit of a big hit for Minnesota if they don't have Harrison Smith. Offensive tackle Brian O'Neill, he's dealing with an elbow injury. He's listed as questionable. I expect him to play, and he's going to be needed in this matchup for Minnesota. He could line up against Nick Bosa a lot. Last year, Bosa went against him almost every single snap in that football game, them having Cleveland Farrell and Randy Gregory rush against the other side where you got a very, very talented Christian Darrisaw that plays left tackle. So we'll see. I expect Bosa to kind of move more around, go to both sides this year, with Floyd having opportunities against O'Neal as well. And then Ed Ingram, starting guard, he's dealing with a triceps injury that, it could limit him a little bit. So those guys are questionable. We'll see if they play. And we're going to get to Ingram in a minute because I definitely have him a part of these key matchups in this football game. and that's going to be a fun one. So now we're caught up on the injuries. We know kind of where everyone sits as far as that goes, and now we can start talking about key matchups. And I mention this every week, but it's going to seem like a broken record, but in this case, it's the true story. Both of these teams need to establish a run game against the other. And for the Vikings, it's very important for them to go ahead and help Sam Darnold a little bit. If you can get a run game going with Aaron Jones, you can slow down this 49ers defense. You can put them on their heels. And if you start getting their linebackers who have to be more aggressive to stop the run and stopping Aaron Jones, then it creates opportunities and a void in the middle of the defense to be able to get the football out. There's a likelihood that they're going to try to run more 12 and 21 personnel in this game, and they don't run a lot of 21 personnel. About 7.3% of the time do they bring Ham, the fullback, on and run 21 personnel. But with 12 personnel, we've seen kind of an uptick in them doing that. And why is that significant? Because when they do that, that means they're lining up to go against Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. He's on the field. Last year with Osborne on the team, the Vikings were more in tune with going 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers on the field with Jefferson, of course, and you had Osborne, and you had Addison. And that made a lot of sense because you've got O'Connell coming from the Sean McVay mentality of 11 personnel, and that's what he is used to, and that's what he called. But there's been an uptick. Last year there was an uptick in 12 personnel, especially with the emergence of TJ Hawkinson. And this year they made more moves to bring in tight ends that could help, and that's what they're going to try to do in this game by bringing in the tight end Josh Oliver and Johnny Munt. They have 2 tight ends right now, even with Hawkinson on the shelf, that could help this football team. So expect to see some of that. Now, last week against the Giants, the Vikings rushed for 111 yards and got 4.3 yards per carry. Now, Aaron Jones was very good. He made some plays when it come to the ground. He got 98 yards on the ground, was very effective. But when it came to Ty Chandler, he wasn't as effective in his carries. Now, there wasn't a lot of carries for him, but it was very limited. He got just over 2 yards per carry last week. So it's about stopping Aaron Jones, and the 49ers know how difficult that is. Last year in the divisional round of the playoffs, they faced Aaron Jones with the Green Bay Packers, and Jones almost ended the 49ers season with a tremendous run where he flipped the field in a hurry, nearly house-called what could have been a game-clinching play. Now, it was a missed field goal on that play by Carlson on that drive that allowed the 49ers to be able to come back and win that game. But Aaron Jones has got all the ability in the world to make plays, and it's significant because I brought up the 12 and 21 personnel, that matchup of Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles against the Vikings offense. And last week we were concerned about it going against the Jets. The Jets, however, do not have the tight ends to be able to consistently run 21 and 12 personnel. That's not a problem when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings. They can run 12 personnel, put 2 tight ends on the field, make the 49ers go to their base 4-3, and then take advantage of Flannigan-Fowles. Now, in transparency, the Vikings are better throwing the football out of 12 personnel than they are running the football out of 12 personnel, at least right now. But they can still run it effectively. They went to it a little bit early in the game last year in week 7, and they got the 49ers on some of those toss plays outside. They were able to get Alexander Mattison going in that game. Now, the 49ers tightened it up. They figured it out, and it got a little bit better. But they're still effective getting the ball to their tight ends in that game. TJ Hawkinson went crazy. So I look for them to try to take advantage of the tight ends again in this game. And I look for them to try to get some matchups where they get a tight end against Flannigan-Fowles or a tight end in behind some of the 49ers zone coverage. The 49ers defense is definitely different this year. So if you're a Minnesota fan and you're watching this, you have to take into account Steve Wilkes' defense is completely different from what we're getting from Nick Sorensen. Nick Sorensen's running a defense that's more in tune with what DeMeco Ryans did in 2022. So it's going to look different. It's going to play a little bit different. But the key for the Vikings is still to get the run game going. Get Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, and Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles engaged in trying to stop the run, and then find windows behind that to get rid of the football. If you do that, number one, you'll stay ahead of the sticks and you'll keep pressure off Sam Darnold. If Sam Darnold is comfortable in the pocket, it's going to be a really good thing for him. Now, the flip side of that is the San Francisco 49ers only gave up 68 yards on the ground last week to Breece Hall and the New York Jets. They absolutely stuffed the run. And so it is literally a strength on strength here with the Vikings running the ball so well last week against the 49ers, who held Breece Hall, who's considered one of the better young running backs in the league, in check. And so this is going to be one of those competitions where you have two that are very solid when it comes to running games. And on the flip side, the 49ers' goal in this game is to get Jordan Mason rolling, get him going downhill, and make this game where they can attack that defense and keep them a little bit on their heels, get them having to engage in stopping the run game and allowing some of those open windows over the middle of the field. That's going to be a key element to this football game, is making sure you can find those windows. Now, Coach Brian Flores does a very good job of giving unique looks and kind of confusing you on what you do. And so the 49ers getting a run game going will simplify those looks a little bit. You go back and you watch last year's game, the 49ers were finding areas in the middle of the field behind the linebackers and in front of the safeties to get the football to guys like Jawan Jennings, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle. They were tight windows a lot of the time. So effective run game is key. 49ers also turned over the football way too much. So last year, Kirk Cousins started the first drive by throwing an interception to Charvarius Ward. 49ers start marching down the field, and then Christian McCaffrey fumbles in the red zone. Those are key mistakes you can't make. So keeping track of the football is something important as well. And both these teams caused 2 turnovers last week, something to monitor. So 49ers went for 4.7 yards per carry last week. Very effective, 180 yards on the ground against the Jets. Just for reference, last year the 49ers averaged 140 yards on the ground for the season. So very, very good run game. And, of course, that was with Christian McCaffrey. Now it's with Jordan Mason, and that's going to be one of the keys. Can Jordan Mason be as effective this week against Minnesota, a really good run-stopping defense from last week? Can he be as effective this week? Last week, Minnesota Vikings only gave up 74 yards on the ground to the New York Giants. They kept Devin Singletary in check, and they played very effective defense. And, of course, once the Giants got down, they're not exactly going to stick with the running game. And so Vikings did a good job getting up and just making that happen. Same with the 49ers. Once the 49ers got up pretty significant on the Jets, run game disappears. But that's the name of the game. Make a team one-dimensional, and when your offense starts rolling the way both of these did, then it keeps them one-dimensional as the opposing team plays makeup. So run games for both teams is going to be very important in this matchup. Now, another key to this football game is going to be Jonathan Grenard versus Colton McKivitz. And McKivitz had a great game last week for the 49ers. He only gave up 2 pressures, and one of those was a quarterback hit. It was a pretty good game for McKivitz. He did really well when it came to run blocking and pass blocking. He held up, and that's the way you say it about McKivitz. But I thought it was his best game we've seen from him in a while, and definitely a far cry from what we saw last year, where in week 1 he gave up 3 sacks to TJ Watt. Now, the Vikings don't have that top line pass rusher like TJ Watt. Last year they had Danielle Hunter, but Grenard is pretty darn good. He had 12.5 sacks last year for the Houston Texans. He's very athletic. He's very strong, 6'3", nearly 260 pounds, and he's got the combination of strength and speed to be a problem for any offensive tackle. The speed part is the part that I'm worried about for Colt McKivitz. It's when you have the ability to be able to move laterally the way that Grenard does and get upfield and then work back inside. That weight transfer for Colt McKivitz starting out in his kick slide moving back, he has to make sure he keeps some of his weight inside, but sometimes he gets out on his skis and allows for that inside move. I worry about that when it comes to Grenard. Now, Grenard basically had 0 stats last week. No tackles, no sacks, nothing. But we know who this player is. I'm not going to just take into account that last week he wasn't effective, and so he's not going to be effective this week. This is going to be a key matchup. So one of the things we always talk about when it comes to the 49ers is once you establish a very good running game, then it takes the pressure off your offensive line because you can do a couple of things. Number one, you can run play action and move the pocket. You get everyone going one way, bring Brock out on the other side, and that takes a little bit of the pressure off the offensive line. No traditional pass sets when you do that. But also staying ahead of the sticks. 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s are your friend, where Brock Purdy can get rid of the football in under 2.5 seconds and take the pressure off of your offensive line. If the 49ers are going to have to hold on to this football for 3.5, 4 seconds to get plays vertically down the field to be able to convert 3rd and 15, that's where I have a concern for the 49ers. 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, those aren't great. That means Colt McKivitz is going against Grenard, who knows that it's going to be a pass, and he's coming. Also, that allows defensive coordinator Brian Flores to bring the kitchen sink. Sometimes he will. Sometimes he'll show it and he'll back everyone off. Either way, you get more exotic looks with that type of situation. 49ers best situation, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, where you can still have the threat of running the football. If you have the threat of running the football, then that means they can't fully, number one, come after you, because if they fly too far upfield, right, you got the draw, you got the screen you could take advantage of. You could also run the football at them. So it's very imperative for the 49ers to have early down success. Another weakness for the 49ers last year, negative plays on 1st and 2nd down, whether that was penalties or that was just bad plays, bad calls by Kyle Shanahan trying to be too aggressive. Those types of things you're going to have to watch. So 49ers need to limit early down mistakes and then take advantage of 3rd and very manageable with 3rd and short situations. That's how they get it done, and that's how you take the pressure off Colton McKivitz. You put Grenard on the other side going against Trent Williams, I think you're feeling pretty good about it. Now, the Minnesota Vikings have other pass rushers as well, including young rookie Dallas Turner, and we'll see what Dallas Turner does in this game. I like him a lot. We'll see how quickly he develops. But also, Van Ginkel last week was impactful, and Van Ginkel's a guy that can move all over the place. He can rush off the edge. He can blitz. He's going to be impactful. Pace also as a blitzer. Ivan Pace Jr. is somebody to watch, trying to put pressure on the San Francisco 49ers interior part of their offensive line. So we'll see. We'll see what McKivitz does. I think McKivitz, that he can have success getting Grenard moving in the run game and creating some holes. That's advantage McKivitz. And then I think if it's 3rd and long, advantage Grenard when it comes to pass rush. And that's one of the things I'm concerned about in this football game. Now, let's talk about Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan versus Brian Flores. And this is going to be one of the keys in this game. It's got to be a part with Brock Purdy. It can't just be Shanahan Flores, because Purdy's got to execute Kyle Shanahan's vision and what Kyle Shanahan sees when he's looking at Flores' defense on the field. But you've got a Brian Flores that will blitz close to 80% of the time, and then also will run the cover 0, which is man coverage across the board. Not a lot of teams do that anymore. It's very dangerous. You would think there would be a lot of whole shot plays, but Kyle Shanahan said in his presser today that it's crazy that he can do that, and then it's still a bend and don't break defense. Brian Flores has mastered the way to do this. He's very tough to deal with, and so the 49ers have to make sure they're very diligent with making sure they find their hot reads. So Brock Purdy's got to be able to locate, read what he sees, and Kyle Shanahan's going to do a very good job of trying to unravel and unveil what Brian Flores is doing. And how does he do that? Well, first off, motion shifts. Or shifts. You move formation shifts. You move guys around. See what kind of defensive adjustment you get. You motion, not just once. You motion twice pre-snap. By doing that, you're going to get a look. Okay, they're motioning with them. Maybe we got man coverage. Oh, this guy revealed he's going to blitz. We got a guy who revealed he was going to drop as a safety, and now you've got a 2-high safety look, or you got a single high safety look, or you had 2, and now someone comes up into the box trying to stop your run. All that movement and all that motion, from formation shifts to motion, help reveal what the defense is doing. Now, if the defense can stand pat and not move while the 49ers are doing motion, then they won't reveal anything. But that's almost impossible the way the 49ers do, because sometimes they'll catch you, they'll motion once. Sometimes they'll motion twice. So if you don't move, you're not willing to adjust on motion 1 and reveal it, you could catch yourself in a bad predicament. So that's what Kyle Shanahan's going to try to do for Brock. Reveal it. Once it's revealed and you can kind of reveal the pressure, Jake Brendel's got to make sure that he gets his offensive line going the right direction with the protection scheme. And then Brock Purdy's got to know where his hot routes are going to be. Got to be willing to take what's there. This is a week that if it's there, take it. Make sure you consistently move the sticks. Get that Vikings defense on their heels because the Vikings defense wants to impose their will on you. And if the Vikings defense is able to bring pressure and get Brock Purdy, struggling within the pocket, they're going to have an opportunity to create turnovers. Turnovers cause a lot of problems for the 49ers. Also, if you're playing on your heels and you're playing responsive offense, you're responding to what the defense is doing all the time, and their pressure is getting to you, you're going to have negative plays. You need to dictate the tempo. You need to dictate what the defense does. And that's going to be one of the things that we find out early. Is it Brian Flores that's going to catch control of this game and dictate what's going on? Or is it going to be Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy? It's going to be unique. I think the 49ers are going to try to mix in a lot of Jordan Mason in the running game and try to get this Minnesota Vikings going backwards and try to wear them down a little bit. And I think when it comes to the Vikings, they're going to try to stop the run and then vary the looks for Brock Purdy and see if they can slow him down just a little bit to get pressure on. Also, they're going to test the 49ers interior offensive line, especially Jake Brendel. And that's one of the things I'm a little bit worried about in this game is seeing Harrison Phillips line up over the top of Jake Brendel in this game. That is a concern for me. Jake Brendel did not look good last week. Javon Kinlaw was throwing him around at times. So that's a concern, and I think this could be a concern in this football game to see how exactly they go about that interior defensive line for the Vikings in this matchup. Now, one of the things that's interesting in this game as well, and a matchup to watch, is going to be Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave, both very good speed rushers from the inside. And I talked about it earlier about Gross Matos coming back. Throw him into the fold as well. He will line up in these positions as well on obvious pass downs. But those guys, those three against Garrett Bradbury and Ed Ingram. And Ingram, of course, is the one that's injured. He's questionable. We'll see if he plays. But those guys struggled last week against the interior defensive line for the New York Jets. Ed Ingram had a 9.3 pass blocking grade last week, and center Garrett Bradbury was at 26.8. Dexter Lawrence was fantastic against them last week, and they both combined to give up 10 pressures and a sack. So this is going to be one of those keys. We know how good Darrisaw is. We know how good O'Neal is. Now, the 49ers are putting out some pretty talented edge rushers as well with Leonard Floyd and with Nick Bosa. But you also got this interior battle as well. Malik Collins has showed what he's capable of doing, and Javon Hargrave had 7.5 sacks last year. He's a double-digit caliber sack guy. But also, Yetur Gross-Matos had 4.5 sacks last year, most of those coming while playing on obvious pass downs. So third and long, playing inside, using his lateral quickness against different interior offensive linemen. This is going to be interesting. So you're going to see a combination. I think we will see Gross-Matos out there with Floyd and Bosa sometimes, and they're going to use a lot of unique fronts, a lot of unique stunts to try to take advantage of that interior offensive line. And it was a bad showing last week. Now, all reality, Dexter Lawrence is a very good defensive tackle, but so is Javon Hargrave. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that matchup because those grades are just not good. And maybe it was Ingram's injury that made him not play well because Ingram's pretty effective normally, but 9.3 pass blocking grade, that's really low. I mean, that's not effective at all. And then Bradbury, I mean, he's going to be a lot of help this week. He's not a guy that's going to have someone line up over him very often, so you don't have to worry about that. But that's going to be a key matchup to watch is how does the 49ers three-man group, and of course they'll have Jordan Elliott and Kevin Givens rushing as well, but when you get to 3rd and 7 and further, you're going to get Collins, Hargrave, and Gross-Matos out there in those interior defensive line spots. And if Gross-Matos, and he is going to be healthy and ready to play, you might actually see Nick Bosa line up over a guard. You might see Leonard Floyd line up over a guard. And then they could rush from the interior, or you could get a little bit of a line stunt. You get a little TE stunt and get those guys coming to the outside after you get that other defensive end going in. it could be really fun for the 49ers to run some stunts and some games up front, and Gross Matos gives them that ability. Now, of course, though, we talked about the run game. If you don't stop the run game and you don't stop Aaron Jones and they're having 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, your time for all those things is not going to be to your benefit. So the 49ers know what they have to do. The Vikings know what they have to do. And what's crazy is we went through these key matchups, and there's so much more still left to talk about. There's so many more key matchups. I'm going to put some more of this in the game preview show. Of course, the game preview show, I'm going to go through key matchups on offense and defense. I'm going to talk a little bit about some other stuff that I found out, some interesting stuff about Sam Darnold and some of the stats, and how he has the most effective game that he can have. So that's going to be in the game preview show. I'm going to give bold predictions, for the game last week. It didn't do too bad. I hit on a couple of the bold predictions last week. The one about McCaffrey couldn't happen because he didn't play. But also, I'm going to talk about who's going to win this game. I'm going to make an actual pick, 49ers or Vikings. Can the 49ers get off the snide? 32 years going to Minnesota and playing and not being able to get a win. House of Horrors. Do they overcome? Is 2024 the year? Plus, we'll talk a little bit about the effect of getting Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams back in the fold. All that is going to be on the game preview show. I hope you guys will all check that out. That's going to be available on Saturday. So whatever you're listening to it, it's going to be available Saturday. Come check it out. And of course, after the game, join me for the game reaction show. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. 49ers Cutback on Believe. This episode was brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.